We're about to get down and dirty into the bird dog training. I didn't mean to say into the bird dog training. Does that still make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I can always take out the.
All right.
If it sounds weird, so we're fine.
You want me to just re-say it?
Do you want to re-say it?
Sure.
All right. We'll have you re-say it. And then.
All right. Here we go. This episode of the Flush Podcast is brought to you by Aluma Trailers, Onyx Hunt, Waltons, and by Nutrisource Pet Foods. Today I'm joined by Josh Miller, owner of River Stone Kennels, for the second episode in our two-part series titled Retriever Roadmap. We're about to get down and dirty into bird dog training.
Much better. Glad you redid it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah.
That's the only thing that I script on this entire show, Josh. So I figure I can at least, read.
It's the only thing you get to retake on.
Yes, exactly.
The first one was terrible. The second one was great. Yeah. In case you're wondering.
The funny thing is, Brandon always, if I start talking before or after something, he'll include that into the show. And
randomly.
It just appears.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Ready, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Flush Podcast. I'm Travis Frank. I'm your host. Brandon Morton, as always, is our producer. We are joined once again today by Josh Miller. Last week, we learned Josh's story and his journey into the bird dog training world. Took him basically all over the world, overseas. It's cool to hear your journey, Josh, and I hope people enjoyed that. But today we're going to dive into the Retriever Roadmap. This is, again, if you want to hear more about kind of how we set this up, you're going to have to go back into last week. But this week we're gonna dig into all of your dog training years, into your mind, and try to help people understand a little bit about what you're thinking and how you're working with dogs. So are you ready to rock and roll?
We are all ready to go. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you got turkeys coming up, turkeys on the brain, like many of us do. So appreciate you giving us a little bit of time. Let's start with just a quick, if you wouldn't mind, just a 1 or 2 sentence summary of what is the Retriever Roadmap before we jump into it.
Yeah, well, the Retriever Roadmap is awesome. I mean, I think that's like the short version.
Yeah.
So here's what Retriever Roadmap really is it is a video based step-by-step training program that if you are training your dog at home, you can go through and watch each step, watch different dogs, dogs have not done these drills before, and really go through and try to map out what the best route is for you. And it took us a very long time, many years to pull this whole program together. And the idea is that no two dogs or no two people will go through a training regimen the same way. So there is no step 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. Everyone has a different path, and every dog has strengths and weaknesses. Every owner has strengths and weaknesses. Every owner has different tools or property available to them. And so finding the best route that is for you and your dog is really crucial on how you achieve your ultimate goals. And, so what we've done is we've broken this down. I think video is so impactful for people because they can watch what's going on rather than if you read something, if you hear about something, there's always, that up for interpretation piece of it that can really be a block, for a lot of people, especially when you don't do this every day. How can you expect to know, all the lingo or how something is supposed to look? And so video is just really neat, to be able to, allow people to absorb things and really communicate as clearly as possible for us.
Yeah, I remember when I started training Daisy, I got some old, I think it was Rick Smith, or maybe it was Ronnie, or maybe it was both of them. I think it was both of them. And I watched some of their old DVDs. I had to pull a DVD player off of the out of the attic and plug it back in to to hook up to our TV, but I remember sitting there watching and just the patience that they had working with a puppy and starting their whole training process. You know, the foundation is so critical. Everything stems from that. And so watching them just do the same thing again, and all of a sudden the puppy did what they wanted, and it was like, boom, then they were able to move on to the next step. So seeing it is really, really helpful, obviously. I mean, there's a lot of value there. We're going to dig into it today. Verbally, you can listen and try to understand. But then, obviously, if you want more information, you can head to retrieverroadmap.com. That's the actual website that you have built for this training process that you have put together. But let's start with the first bullet, if you will, in your roadmap, which is train the trainer. Because I know a lot of people that don't necessarily have the time to train their dog start to finish. But they do have the finances, and they're willing to send that dog to a trainer like you, Josh. And then when they get the dog back, I've heard some say, the dog doesn't do what it did at the trainer. And I think the reason is because they don't necessarily grasp. I mean, you can help explain this, Josh, but they might not know what they're letting the dog get away with, or how the dog is slipping in this area because of the things that they don't know what they don't know, right? So training the trainer obviously is important. I've learned that. But from your perspective, how big is that in this process?
Yeah, well, I really believe that it's the most important program or course that we put in the program. The biggest thing is, when you're training your dog, when you're handling your dog, you're the coach of the team. You're the driver of the car. And if you don't know how to, get the car to go, if you don't know how to, move your team in the right direction, you're never going to get to the point that you want to be at. I know this sounds really funny coming from a person that makes their living training dogs, but there is that hurdle when the dogs go home, and let me kind of tell you, I'll break it down of one of the biggest frustrations that I have, and Dave, who if you don't know Dave's trained for me at the kennel now for almost 10 years, so we've had a lot of experience together, kind of working through a lot of different dogs, and you always have those dogs that they were just difficult, right? They were really frustrating. Maybe they weren't overly natural. Maybe they just really had a hard time understanding things. You kind of pulled your hair out. You had at each stop or each hurdle, but you got the dog to the end result, and you're so proud of it, and you're so happy. And the owner comes, and you spend all this time showing the owner, showing everything, and it's like, okay, cool, you guys did your job, thanks. And they leave, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if it really sunk in. I don't know if it really sunk in of how much went into this dog and every hurdle that we accomplished and overcame along the way. And but how could they? Yeah. Right? Like, they weren't there. They didn't witness the ebbs and flows and the peaks and valleys and all the work that went into that. And so here's where I think
do those dogs, sorry to jump in, but do those dogs tend to be the dogs that regress or take steps backwards in the progress that you've made with them?
Oftentimes I think more naturally they regress. I mean, there are other dogs that regress just simply because, the owners go home and they don't keep up with the training. That was one of the solves with Retriever Roadmap is, okay, now you have a trained dog, but that's not a robot. That dog doesn't just stay that way for the rest of their life. So now you have a platform to go to continue to not only keep your dog up, but, maybe tighten up any loose ends you saw happen over hunting season, or you're struggling with something, go back, find what it is, and find what you need to do to fix it and keep things fresh, keep things going, keep that dog at the level that you want them to be.
Can you give us an example of what one of those might be?
Sure. Yeah. So let's just use, there's a lot of them. Okay. So for, I know you guys are upland specific, so I'm going to use like one waterfowl and one upland, sure. Example. So, waterfowl example, your dog starts breaking on hunts, meaning that, before you're done shooting, before you actually send the dog is going, into the decoys. And for those of you that are upland specific hunters, maybe, maybe you haven't seen this, but, birds are coming in, you pull up, your buddies pull up to shoot, boom, 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 boom. We do not want the dog running out in front of us, before we send them. I mean, it is the most dangerous place for your dog to be, is running, breaking out in front of those gun barrels, because all your buddies are probably focused on killing birds rather than where the dog is at, and there's just nothing good that happens from it. So from a safety aspect, along with a number of other reasons, we want that dog to be steady. So your dog starts breaking. Okay, well, he never broke at the trainer. He didn't break in the first few hunts. It's something that he just ended up getting excited. He got away with it once. They challenged me on it. Okay, so how do I fix this? Well, you could probably send him back to the trainer the next summer, right? But, it might be something that you want to fix, mid-season, or you want to really work on it. Well, this gives you the platform to go there and say, okay, so this is my issue. I need to go, back to the steadiness part. What are the prerequisites to get to this point, and what do I have to do? So find where that loose end is and wrap it up. For an upland dog, maybe it's the dog is now dropping, that bird short. And if you have a bird that is, winged, maybe when that dog drops it, he takes off running again. The dog has to go grab it again, and then he drops it again. The dog, maybe he gets distracted and drops it, and all of a sudden that bird is gone, and you're trying to find that bird. It's not a complete retrieve. Now we go back and say, okay, so he's not finishing his retrieve. Let's go into the trained retrieve section. Okay, so this is the point that he's at. Maybe we have to take a few steps back, iron this out. There's so many things that happen. And I think one of the things that I like to talk about is hunting season will naturally unravel training season, at least to an extent.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just the way that it is. And you think about, if somebody's out there going, well, why is that? I think the biggest reason is because, training, we are trying to control every situation. Like we use bird launchers to keep the birds in place. We know right where they are, and we can release them at the time that we need to, right? It doesn't happen that way, in the wild, in the field, right? Yep. And so, we go from very controlled situations to completely uncontrolled situations. And naturally, when you do that, it just offers itself some gray area where these dogs can get out of pocket because you're on a live hunt. Maybe either don't make a correction, or far too late on the correction because you didn't know it was coming. There's a lot going on. And so naturally is going to unravel. And that's why, like, the biggest thing that I like to say when it revolves around training is I want people to fall in love with the process, not with the end result. Because quite frankly, there's never an end result. Even when you get through a finished dog, fully trained, it doesn't mean that dog stays there. There's always things to keep up on. There are always things that they're going to regress on. You need to sharpen back up and move back forward. There's always going to be this ebb and flow. But if you fall in love with the process itself, you are going to be successful, and you're going to enjoy working with your dog on a regular basis. You're going to enjoy working your dog, every year. You'll see, notice what went wrong. What do I have to fix? What can he get better at? What can we, take another step on? It is a process. And so that's why I always challenge people to fall in love with the process, because there's not an end result. Don't worry about getting to an end result, because there is no end.
So
fall in love with the process.
One of the steps in your training is foundation, and that's been key for my training as well. Because anytime I feel like my dog has done exactly what you said, like when you're in a hunt situation, there's other dogs, there's other hunters, there's a lot of commands being yelled out there. It's uncontrolled environment, and it's your attention. At least for me, like I'm on the field working. I'm working with other people. I can't watch my dog 100% of the time like I could when I'm training with her. So I can't hold her accountable for every miss because I might not see something in the moment. So that's where things can slip from my end. And I think that's probably pretty common for most people that are out hunting, is the scenario, like you mentioned, can allow for a dog to not be held accountable for certain things that they might be held during training season, which, leads to them slipping a little bit. But having the foundation set allows us to really quickly bring our dogs back into what we want them to do, right? I mean, that's the goal here.
Yeah, the foundation is, that's what everything is built off of, right? It's no different than a house that, without the foundation, without a very solid foundation, it doesn't matter what type of a structure you build on that foundation, it will never be as strong as it could have been and likely will have issues down the road. That's the same thing with our dogs. The stronger of a foundation we have, the more solid our structure will be from that point forward with everything we build off it. And I think when you look at your dog, think of it in terms of building. Okay. So what is your end goal? Okay. Are you building a, tiny little house in town that's, just a one level with, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom? Okay. Like, you may not need as much of a foundation, but if you have big goals and big aspirations of a finished dog and everything that a finished dog can do, now you're building a skyscraper, and that building needs much more of a foundation. It needs that much more structure underneath it, and it needs it to be that much more solid because of what is going on top of it. And so your dog is really no different here. You need as solid of a foundation as possible to move forward and build on. And sometimes I think when we have these big goals and it's like, oh, I want to get my dog to take hand signals, I want him to run a blind retrieve, I want to do all these great things, right? It's tempting to not focus on that foundation because this is the boring stuff. Like, this is the stuff every dog does. I want to get to the stuff that not every dog can do. Yeah. Well, the reality is, I want to get to the
birds. I want to get to the birds. That's what everybody wants to do. They want to get to the birds.
Right. Well, because that's the fun part. Yeah. There's nothing fun about walking up and down your driveway on leash. There's just not. But if you have any issue in the field, and there are very few exceptions to this, most of them can be tracked down to that foundation. Like, there's something going on in your foundation that isn't solid enough. And so it always has to be revisited. I mean, I have, all my personal dogs, they're master hunter retriever champions. They have their titles, have everything proven. We do on leash obedience every day, every single day. And it's like, we don't ever get over it, but really this is where, I think, that the train the trainer piece that, you guys talked about here at the beginning, it's like, that's so big because we talk about expectations and why that's important, right? Like, your expectations are a huge part of this. If you have the expectation that your 7-month-old puppy is going to be a complete all-star, 5 months from now when we get in the field, your expectations are wrong. And it's likely going to lead to frustration. It's going to lead to pushing the dog too fast, right? Like, that's a big deal. Let's talk about reading your dog. How do you read your dog, and how do you know what they're talking about, and how do you best communicate with them? Like, that's a big part of this. And so, but it's a part that a lot of people naturally, you're not going to be around. Like, I have a good friend of mine that's a mechanic, right? And, I might know how to change my oil, but I don't know how to, diagnose something when something's going wrong, right? Like, he does, because he sees it all the time. That to me is what this does, is that I see this every day. A professional sees this every day. Let's teach you how to do this. And I think it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to the puppy stage. So would you say that we're kind of coming into puppy season right now? Are we in the heart of it? I mean, you guys are breeders, you and your wife, Whitney. But I think around the country, there's a lot of puppies that are being born around the spring season. Is that accurate?
Oh, for sure. And if you would ask my wife, she would be reiterating that, yes, we are in puppy season because we currently have 5 litters on the ground, which is completely abnormal, but it's just the way that heat cycles lined up for us this year. It was like everything all at once. Yes, we're definitely in it.
You said the other day, you told me that you had 2 litters come out at the exact same night, didn't you?
Oh my gosh, it was incredible. We've never had that before. We had a litter that started, so it was a litter of 6. And I'm my wife and I both are early risers because of, I think, naturally, the obligations of caring for animals and everything. But naturally, we're early risers, so we're up early. We usually get up about 4, get our work done, get the day going. Well, it was one of those days that, like, the kids get home, sent home sick from daycare. So we're dealing with, caring for them, all this stuff. And then it's like, we finally get crawling into bed at 11 at night, and Whitney checks her camera that is on her mama's. And she's like, I think we're having puppies tonight. And of course I'm like, are you kidding me? So we crawl out of bed, start whelping this litter that was actually a couple days early. And it was on puppy 5 of 6 was just being born, and Whitney looks over at the other mom and goes, we might be having 2 litters tonight, which was a
Unreal.
litter of 11.
Unreal.
And so number 1 came before number 6 for the first litter. So we got done with that. And then, we started about 11 o'clock at night and we got done at 1 o'clock the next afternoon. So we were zombies there for a little bit, and that is so abnormal. But that's, Whitney likes to joke and say that's Mother Nature's way of reminding us that we are not in charge of our jobs here.
Yeah. To be good stewards of them. Well, congrats on all the puppies. So if somebody wants, one common question we get asked, or I get asked quite a bit, and I think, Ron and Scott and Bill the same, they ask, how do you know which kind of dog is right for you? And I always tell people, I said, what do you want to do with that dog? Where are you going to be hunting? If you're hunting cattails 99% of the time for pheasants, you probably don't want a big ranging pointing breed dog that wants to get out 300-400 yards. I mean, you want a lab, that's a great cattail busting dog, so it depends on the type of hunting you're going to do. But how do you direct people to find the right puppy? And then once they determine what kind of a breed they want, how do they pick a puppy out of a litter? How do you pick a puppy out of a litter?
Yeah, so great questions. And I think you hit it on the head, where the big thing here for us is we need to, and not necessarily we, but you, if you're looking for a puppy, you need to have those conversations with yourself first. What makes sense? What do you want? What do you need as a family member, as a hunting dog, as a companion? And I think the biggest challenge I have for people is be honest with yourself. There's nothing more frustrating than, getting a dog that is wrong for what you're looking for. And I cannot tell you why, but it seems like there's this trend right now of wanting to be different. And I don't get it when it relates to dogs. And so the reason I say that is, if someone wants a Labrador and they have, they've done the research and they've had Labradors in the past, and like, all my buddies have Labradors, I'm just going to get something different, right? And I get a short hair because he's different, right? Well, that short hair is not a lab, right? I mean, so like it's going to have, likely more energy. It's going to have more run. It's going to have all these things. And then, waterfall dog, probably not your late season dog like your lab is, right? Like, so what is right for you? The whole different thing, it kind of bothers me because that's where people get frustrated. We have just actually a client the other day that, called and was like, hey, this dog did great in the field, all this stuff, but like he goes after every skunk and every porcupine and every raccoon that we've
He's a German dog, isn't it?
He's a wire hair.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, you're not going to get that out of him. It's who he is.
Yes.
And he's like, man, I've never had a dog do this in the past. I'm like, yeah, because you've had labs.
Yes.
It's like, it's different. And so, again, it's just like, what's right for you? And so once you have that, the big thing there is now you get with a breeder that you trust and that is doing things right. And the reason I say that is because, there's a lot of people that are breeding. There's a lot of people, that are, that are having their own lines for, their own reasoning. What makes sense to you? To me, you need to have a breeder that has their credentials, that is doing specifically the health testing. They need to be doing those health testing. Need to make sure that they're producing the happiest, healthiest puppies that they can. And then when you get to the point that, to me, that's your homework, right? So like you have the lines you want, you have the breeder that you trust, you have everything. From that point forward, like, you don't have to do anything as far as I'm concerned, because, like, to be honest with you, I don't like the whole pick of the litter thing. And we don't even do that. I'll tell you what we do at the kennel is when you decide to get a puppy from us, we want to learn about you. Who are you? What's your family situation? What's your living situation? Do you have kids? Do you hunt? What do you hunt? How many days a year do you hunt? What are your goals with your dog? All these things, right? And then what I believe my job is to, one, match you up with the right litter. That's first and foremost. Because if you only hunt, once a year and you want the dog to take, pontoon rides with you and be a companion, and you're, 80 years old and look, just wanting to slow things down. Like you don't want that, fire with fire breeding, right? You want a dog that's fit for that. But then inside the litter, there's going to be very little tendencies and tweaks from each puppy to puppy. It's not going to be big. Like if you were like, hey, I get picked a litter, how do I pick? Honestly, if you're getting a male, just get the boys together, close your eyes and pick one up, because you're not going to be able to tell just by showing up at the breeder and just being like, hey, I want to spend time with it. What we do is we have Whitney pick the puppy because she's with them literally every single day from the time they're born to the time they go home. And that is the only person that can tell you truly what puppy has what tendency, who's the most dominant, who's the most submissive, who carries things around all the time, who, and a quick little story that I like to tell with this, and it kind of reiterates this fact, is that we had a now a friend of ours, but a client of ours at the time, that she works over at the University of Minnesota in the veterinary care department. And, she was going to get this puppy and she wanted this dog to do therapy work. So like go into hospitals, be with sick kids, do that kind of stuff. And so she wanted the most submissive puppy or the calmest puppy, in the litter. So she came out every day after work, did what she had, she called an aptitude test, where she did all this testing with all these puppies, from I think the time from they were like 5 weeks to 7 weeks every day. And I kept my distance. I was respectful for her, did her thing, because I was really interested in it myself. And she got to about 2-3 days before the puppy goes home, and I just pulled in. I was training offsite, pulled in with my trailer, parked, and was going in the office for something. And she's like, hey, Josh, can I get your opinion on something? And I was like, oh my gosh, like I've been waiting for this just because I'm so interested in what she's doing. So I go over there and she's like, yeah, you know what I'm looking for? I think I know which puppy it is. You have little colored collars on each of the puppies, especially when you have a litter of black labs. Like you got to keep them all apart, so you know who's who. And she's like, I think the puppy that's best fit for me is purple collar. And the reason is that every time I'm here, he's hanging out, sleeping in the corner. He'll come kind of just like curl up in my lap. Like he seems like super docile, super chill. And that's exactly what I need. I'm like, huh, interesting. And she's like, what do you think? And I was like, I think that's exactly 100% wrong. And she like perked up and she's like, what? And I was like, well, let me tell you, I watch purple collar every single morning, wake up and be the most dominant puppy that there is. Physical, like beating up brothers and sisters. And I was like, you come every day at 2:00. And the only reason he seems like the little, ball of a teddy bear that he is right there is because he's tired. He's tired from beating up his brothers and sisters all day. And she's like, oh my gosh. And so the next day, maybe a day or two later, because I think it was a Saturday, she came in the morning and she's like, oh my gosh, Josh, it's unbelievable, and it's just like, so my whole point with that story is there's someone that was very, very detailed, but there's still these variables that unless you're with these puppies all the time, like Whitney is, or like your breeder probably will be, that's the only person that can tell you. And so the reason I don't like the whole pick of the litter thing is that I believe the litter that I put on the ground, the difference in what those puppies go to be, all depends on their environment with their owners. What are the owners going to do with them? How are they going to handle them? They are products of their environment. And so the pick of the litter, to me, it makes it seem like the first puppy that goes is the best and the last puppy that goes is the worst. And that's not at all true. You've talked about Rick Smith before, and Rick's a great friend of mine. And one time I heard Delmer tell a story, which Delmer is very, very good at doing. But he was talking about Rick, and I think he mentioned two champions that Rick had. And he talked about these champions. And he goes, Rick, how did you pick those two puppies? And Rick was like, well, they were the last ones left over in the litter. And it's like, exactly. Every one of those puppies probably had the potential to go do that, but the environment that puppy was in was one that offered him the opportunity to go become what he became. And so I think it's so important to know that, and it's so important to look at it that way, because it's not 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no way you can tell that at 7-8 weeks old.
Our friends at Waltons are celebrating this month because they just launched an updated website to make shopping for all of your wild game and food processing needs so much easier. And to celebrate, they're giving away a Waltons chambered vacuum sealer, an assortment of Waltons vacuum bags, an apron, and a collection of seasoning shakers, all valued at over $1,300. The best part? They have giveaways like this each and every month. This is just one of the many ways Jonathan Tremblay and the family at Waltons try to help you make the most of your meat processing and cooking needs. They also host podcasts, live streams, and online chats in their Meatgistics University. Waltons.com has over 5,000 items on their site, in stock and ready to ship the same day. From grinders, mixers, stuffers, slicers, smokers, vacuum sealers, seasonings, and so much more. Head to Waltons.com to sign up for their giveaway and shop from the comfort of your home or anywhere in the field. Waltons, they have everything but the meat. Aluma Trailers, they've got you covered. Their trailers are built by a hardworking team in Bancroft, Iowa. They have models for nearly any and every hauling need, from ATV and UTV trailers to utility, snowmobile, motorcycle, car trailers, and even fully enclosed trailers like mine. Trust me when I say Aluma Trailers tow gear like a dream, and they are 100% maintenance free. Plus, they come with an industry best 5-year warranty. Visit alumakln.com to find a trailer that fits your needs. For everything that gets you outdoors, Aluma Trailers will help you get there. So a lot of times I've heard this saying over and over again because it's helped people. They've seen my dog. She wants to go see what's over the next hill, and then the next hill, and the next hill, and the next hill. And she just has this motor to fly, and she wants to hunt. Her prey drive is insane. And that, to me, it just led to a lot of challenges, in learning how to train with her. But trainers kept telling me, you can pull a rope back, but you cannot push a rope. So they're saying there is that you want the drive because you can shape that, you can work with it. But a dog that does not have that drive can be a little bit more challenging to work with. I'm assuming you've seen great breed, just great genetics, and have dogs that have that drive, but then in the same litter, is it possible to have dogs that do not have that drive?
Well, so I wish you could see me right now, Travis, because I'm smiling. It's so funny that you say that, because the first thing I was going to ask you was, do you believe that you can put more drive into that dog, or you can dictate where that goes? Because there's sometimes that people are like, gosh, like, I wish my dog would run bigger. Like, how do I get him to run bigger? And it's like, sorry, like, mom and dad put that into them. Yeah. And that you can't teach that, now you can pull them back, but to push them out is very, very difficult. And so for sure, there's no guarantees with dogs in general. There's really not. Actually, it's really interesting. We have had a number, we're very blessed to have, very, very good veterinary, circle around us, very renowned, people in their field, specifically sporting dogs, are just great, great people. We're very lucky to have them as friends and can go to. Every one of those people have urged us and told us we should be taking the health guarantee away from our breedings. And we're like, why? Like, we're doing everything we can to make sure, like, all the money that goes into testing and genetics and all this stuff, like, we're doing everything we can to show that we're producing the healthiest puppies, that we possibly can. And the answer that we've been given is, yes, you are. That's why you shouldn't be giving a guarantee, because you're already doing it, because there's so much that goes into it. If the dog is mishandled in a way, jumping off, stairs, or, running on concrete a lot at a young age, or blacktop, like, on an x-ray could look like hip dysplasia or look like elbow issues. It wasn't. It's not a genetic thing. It's an injury, but it can come up that way. And there is absolutely no 100% guarantee in dogs ever, or animals ever, for that matter. You can do everything right and something still goes wrong. And so, to your point or your question, sure it can. You can have a dog, you can have a litter that's all crazy, crazy, crazy driven, and then have one that just doesn't. It doesn't happen often. I would say it has more to do with how the dogs are handled. I mean, as an early stage puppy, you got to let him be a puppy. You're not trying to make that dog be steady and, scold them for doing everything wrong when they're, 10 weeks old. You're trying to build a confident bull puppy, because you can do something with a confident bull puppy. You can't with a dog that is nervous and scared and doesn't want to go do things and wrong, nervous, make the wrong step. So we want to build up. We want to take these puppies, but it starts with that puppy. It starts with the right genetics. I like to, you have the saying that, you could give me the water boy of the team and say, hey, you've got 8 months to work with him every day, but at the end of that 8 months, he has to be able to beat Michael Jordan one-on-one. Never going to happen, right? Never going to happen, because the water boy isn't built for it, right? It's not in who he is. So that's where the puppy part comes into play. Like, you have to do your homework right away. We have a lot of people that will call in and be like, hey, I'd like to get my dog trained. I thought, I'd save money on the puppy and put it into training, and it doesn't work that way. I mean, you have to have the dog to work with first.
So you've got the dog and you've got a puppy at home. At what point do you encourage people to start training with that dog?
Yeah, well, I think training right away, but we need to define what that training is. When I say training, it's not, start trying to, do, heel, sit, come on a lead and, giving them a correction on that lead. What I mean is the training, and sometimes we don't even look at it as training, right? Socialization is training. We may not look at it as a training session, but socializing a puppy is training. Crate training, right? Putting the puppy in the crate, getting them used to that, getting them desensitized to being in there, getting them toward where they enjoy being in there. That's very, very important. All these things you can start training, start teaching these little commands, right? Start teaching what sit is, or teaching what come is, give them that reward. You can do all that stuff early on. And why that's so important is because if we look forward to any goal or aspiration that we have, let's just say we're out in South Dakota on a pheasant hunt, and, we're going to be with all of our buddies, right? Like, that's what we're going towards. But if we don't socialize this puppy now, and, this dog is maybe either afraid or gets aggressive towards other dogs, like, how can we go hunt with all of our buddies, right? If we go stay in a hotel room where the dog is anxious and nervous because they don't know where they are, and then we put them in a crate, but they've never been in the crate or don't use the crate at home, now all of a sudden there's this anxiousness and the dog gets stressed out and it leads into all these other issues. It's like, all this stuff starts now, even though we're looking towards the end goal, it's now. And there's little things to do along the way. No, we're not trying to prepare for the ACTs as a preschooler, but there are things we're going to teach that ultimately lead to that.
And the crate, this is something that I've touched on a few episodes ago. The crate is not to be ever used as a punishment for a dog. The crate is a safe place for your dog. And it's a place that they know as theirs, that you shouldn't feel bad about having them in the crate. I mean, canines outside of our houses in the wild world live in dens, so this is normal. And that's why I've heard from a lot of people, the importance of the crate. And then somebody sees a dog in a crate and they think, oh, the poor dog is in this. No, that's a safe spot, So my dog doesn't go in her crate as a punishment ever. I mean, I can correct her on something, but it's not, we're sending her into the crate. And that was a valuable lesson I learned early on. And now, that's a spot she enjoys going to and has no problem with it.
Yeah. Well, think about the consistency that your crate can provide for your dog, right? Like, if that's the safe place, if that's my positive area, that is my spot, traveling becomes that much less stressful because they're comfortable. It becomes that much safer, right? Because it's by far the safest place for a dog to travel, especially if you have, like Lucky Duck kennels. There's kennels out there that are extremely well rated, for, even crash tests. Like, it is the safest place for your dog, to travel. It adds consistency and comfortability for your dog, in different scenarios, different setups. Like when we go to shows, like Pheasant Fest, I have a crate in the booth and we do our deal. And I put my dog in their crate. if they had to sit out for the whole show all day and with all the people petting them and all the dogs and all the back and forth, I mean, that can be a stressful environment. And so to put the dog to a point that's like, hey, this is your spot. You can feel comfortable. You can go to sleep. You can relax. That's a huge deal.
Yeah. Daisy and I were at Game Fair for a couple of days last summer, and that's like her first public appearance that she made. There's hundreds and hundreds of dogs, and she wants to go, and everybody. I mean, she loves everybody, so she wants to go meet them. And I'm constantly, like back, like here. And at the end of the day, she crashed so hard. She was so mentally exhausted from all the people. She never got further than 2 feet from my right leg, but yet she was exhausted at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have a crate. I so wish I had a spot where we'd be like, here you go. You can relax for a little bit, So, okay. So you've got a crate. I mean, I think there's a lot of information out there about, don't get a crate that's too large. You don't want your dog to pee in the crate. Like what's a quick recommendation or a quick guide for puppies and crate size?
Yeah. So spot on. I think too often people think that the dog has to like literally live in the crate as far as it has to be able to, stand up and move around, and how crazy it is. When we fly dogs in from overseas, the crates that they have to be in, they have to be that. They have to be able to stand up, move around. I mean, I swear you could ship a horse in the crate that these dogs come in. I'm like, why do you need this? Smaller is actually better, and if you ever watch a dog in a crate, like very rarely are they like sprawled out using the entire crate and like legs all over the place. Like they curl up in a corner and they like to be touching something, right? I mean, that's how they feel comfortable. And so you don't want one that's crazy big. Smaller is better. And especially as you're crate training, like you'd mentioned, if it's too big, what the dog will naturally do is use one end of the crate as, bathroom time, and the other end of the crate to quote unquote live in, because especially an intelligent dog, but most dogs, they don't want to live in their own soil, right? So they don't want to mess and then lay in it and live in it. I mean, that's just not naturally what most dogs want to do. So they'll go in one side and then live in the other. And so by making that smaller, you can actually expedite and make your potty training in the house that much easier, because you can go from the crate, take them, pick them up so that they don't have time in between the crate and the front door to go to the bathroom, but pick them up, bring them right outside, let them do their business, praise them like crazy, and let them understand, hey, this is right. This is what we want you to be doing. It really expedites that process that a lot of people struggle with.
All right. So now let's get to the training process. Just a quick question. Now that I know you've trained pointing breeds and flushing breeds, which one would you say is easier to train? Is a flusher easier to train than a pointer?
Okay, so there's a couple layers to this, because it's I think it's a little bit of both. Okay, so I think that a pointer is on the front end easier to train because so much of it is natural, right? Like you don't teach a point. The dog either points because genetics tell the dog to point, or they don't. And so I think on the front end, that pointer is easier because you're leaning almost solely on natural, talent. A flusher, there's a lot more that you're really trying to work on as far as like, okay, you can only run, 15 yards ahead of me and you have to stay in here. And, here's how you go back and forth. And of course, from there, then it's the natural ability kind of kicks over. I think when you get into more of the advanced stages, as far as, like my advanced stages on both end is a pointer that is steady through wing shot and fall versus a retriever that is running blind retrieves and, taking casts. I think the retriever is the more difficult finished dog to get to, because with the pointer, you're still leaning on that dog is looking at that bird, has all those instincts going, and then we start reining this in, right? We start letting them know you can't break on the flush. You have to stay, still. You have to. Now, if you start saying now that dog has to retrieve, now that gets more difficult for some dogs, because some dogs, like, the dogs I field trialed, which were, pointers and setters, a lot of those dogs had no interest in retrieving. And I was okay with that, because that's not your job. Mm-hmm. Your job is to point and find the birds. And that was just my opinion on it. So, you start having a dog, you start trying to make a dog retrieve that doesn't want to retrieve. Now that's way more difficult. Where with a retriever, think how crazy this is. For a retriever, run a blind retrieve. I have to line you up, point you in a direction. It could be a 1,000-acre field and there's nothing that you know nothing about that area. I'm going to line you up, say back, and you're supposed to run enthusiastically in that straight direction and into the middle of nowhere until you hear a whistle, and then turn to look at me, and then follow my hand to which way I want you to go. Run blindly, excitedly that way, right? It's like there is no natural part of a dog that wants to do that.
Okay,
and so that's why I appreciate that part of it so much.
Yeah. So speaking of not being natural, I know that I've heard this time and again, and I know you heard it too. But do you get people that say, "Can you teach my lab to point?" And what do you say? I mean, is it doable? Because I know people that say my lab points, and I'm like, okay, let's go hunt. Like I want to see it. I want to, like there could be like a hesitation before that lab jumps in there and flushes a bird. But I wouldn't call that a point. I would call a dog that just freezes and doesn't move until you give it the command to move. Like that's a solid point, in my opinion. So can you teach a flushing dog to point?
No. I mean, it's just straight up no. I mean, you just can't. I mean, that point is an instinct, right? And these dogs have been bred for hundreds of years to do this. And even if, okay, so I have a little yellow female named Sage, and Sage will occasionally, like,
what breed is she?
Just stop. She's a lab. She's a British lab, actually, out of our breeding. And there's times that she'll just hammer and she'll lock up and she'll stop and she'll look. And then when we get up there, she'll jump in and flush the bird. I'm not calling her a pointer, right? I'm not calling her a pointing lab. I'm not calling her any of that stuff because it's not a point, right? Like when you watch a true pointing dog do their thing, first off, it is magical. It is something so unique to watch this dog go from literally, as fast as your dog can run to a complete stone statue, yet have the full intensity, yet have the composure to stand still. I mean, there is so much to that makes that so special. A dog that stops or just hesitates, that's not a point, right? Mm-hmm. Two, that again is not something that you're going to teach. Now, could you potentially teach a dog to stop and sit down on scent? Sure. I don't know why you would want to. There might be a very specific, extremely specific situation out there where someone would want to teach that, and it would take a ton of time, a ton of work, and a ton of control to get that to be done. But that's also not a point. We oftentimes will get people that will call. They might have a short hair, a pointer, a Brittany, a true pointing breed, right? Yep. And say, my dog doesn't point. I need him to come in and get trained how to do it. And it's like, that's not happening either. That's genetics. That is what your dog's mom, dad, grandpa, grandma, great grandpa, great grandpa, that it's in that puppy. It's in that dog. And like we talked about earlier on, when you watch a little pointer puppy, that there's a butterfly that lands in the yard and it points and it locks up and it freezes, right? That is a true point. That puppy has no idea why he's doing it. Not a clue. It's just something in his DNA and his body saying, this is what I'm supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's fascinating for sure. Okay, so you got a puppy and the foundation training begins. Where do we start? How do you start?
You mean with the foundation?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. So with the foundation, one of the things that I always look at is your foundation is your obedience. That's what your foundation is. Yep. And so when you look at your foundation, your basic commands, for pointing dogs or for retrievers sit. I don't know how you guys operate. I never teach my pointing dogs to sit.
So you're not the first. You're not the first person to say that. If I say Daisy, she's sitting right here. Whoa. She just stands there. I don't want her to sit because you don't want your dog to sit on a bird out in the field, and that's the main reason for it too. So when I learned this years ago. Don't ask someone else's dog to sit, which I now have a pointer, and everyone's like, "Sit, Daisy, sit." And so my kids taught her how to do that, but I did not. encourage it.
Yeah.
So my dog will do it. Fortunately, she hasn't sat in the field at all. She cares too much about that bird to do that.
Right.
But
Right.
yes. So you teach a flusher to sit and a pointer to stay.
Right. And then from there, like for us, it's, heel, which, for our retrievers, especially, we always heel on the opposite side that we shoot, especially if you're in a waterfall situation or a drive situation for upland hunters where your dog is sitting at your side or staying at your side.
Yep.
If you're a right-handed shooter and your dog's on your left-hand side, your shells are ejecting away from the dog. So it's not hitting the dog in the nose or distracting them with, empty cartridges flying by them. The other thing is that more times than not, like when people are walking along a road, if this is why I always defer to left if someone doesn't have a preference, if you're walking against traffic like we're supposed to, if the dog is on the left, he's in the ditch rather than in the road. And so it's just a safer place, for the dog to be. Recall, so honestly, I don't care if people use come or here, just stay consistent with it. We like to use place a lot. Place would be, to get on whatever we're asking to get on, whether it's a board, a stand, a dog bed, something like that. That ends up being probably the number one command that people love to use in the house, because how great is it that when people come over, I tell my dog to place and he doesn't leave that bed. It's just a great, command for in the house. Kennel, we could keep going on and on, but just like, you need to have this foundation done, and you need to have, this where this is the boring stuff. It's not fun, but everything you do from here forward is going to be, off of this. And so it has to be done really, really well.
Do you start, this is an important step too, that I learned right away, is like George Lyle calls it sacking, like you sack the horse. You do this with the dog. You just want to rub your hands and it's a calming touch, to get that dog comfortable, that you're always able to touch and work with that dog. It knows its place in the pack, if you will. But do you do that with a flushing breeds as well?
Mm-hmm, for sure. And we really do them at two different points. So the sacking out, I think that everyone that has ever heard of that or has done that, it stems from Delmer. And Delmer was as talented of a horse trainer that he was a dog trainer. Huh. And so I think naturally it just came from that. One of the, I won't tell too much stories here, but a cool story that Delmer told me is how he used an e-collar to teach roping horses how to back up after the cowboy, gets off the horse. Really kind of cool stuff. He got really creative with some of those things, but, the sacking out, where I learned it was from him. And his thing was, you do it as a puppy to teach the dog everywhere that puppy's body is, at some point you're going to need them to submit to you. So, like their toes, like how many people struggle with clipping toenails? Like that's a big one.
Right.
You take the dog to a vet, like the vet needs to be able to check the puppy out or check the dog out eventually, so that we can tell if you're healthy. Like you're going to have to submit all your body to it. You can't be protective or defensive around it. So you do it from a puppy on, it's a big deal. The other point of the training that we use it a lot in is through our train retrieve, which, a lot of people, call it force fetching. I don't call it force fetching because my method is not really forceful like that is. Like the force fetching is, heavy pressure, very forceful. The train retrieve is a lot more teaching, is a lot more, kind of baby steps, step by step. But we do it there every single time we get on the table, just so we're on the same page. It's like, hey, we're going to go through this. This is going to be great. You can trust me. Calm down. Everything's awesome. Like it's amazing what just touching a dog all over their body in a very calm and slow demeanor. It really helps just let that dog take a breath and accept, the session.
How old are they when you start?
Day one. As far as, day one. Yeah. Because here's the thing is like, even if you bring a puppy home and you're like, hey, I'm going to let him be a puppy for about a month and then we'll start on it. And that puppy from day one is learning. Now they're either learning bad things or positive things. And so it's your job and your role to keep them on the right path. It's amazing how often, we do our burning gun introduction. We have, puppies come in for that at 5 months old. it is amazing how often people, come and they're like, man, like I didn't want to screw anything up, so I didn't do anything. And it's like, well, you did something. You don't realize it, but you
Yeah.
did something.
You made
so
bad
it is
habits
really,
okay. That's what happened.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
that's exactly
to
it.
most people's defense, they just don't know that they made bad habits okay. I think the average dog owner,
That's exactly.
I would say a hunter that has a dog that wants to hunt with that dog invests, and I could be completely wrong here, but this is just what I've seen. A hunter tends to invest a lot of their own time into understanding the dog that they're getting and then wanting to invest in it and train with it and then teach that dog more so than somebody that's just getting a house dog, a family dog, because they just are like, well, part of the family. Okay, here you go, dog. You're in the house now. You're running around, and then they're constantly versus telling the dog what you can do. They're telling the dog, no, you can't do this, and I'm just amazed at the behavior of hunting dogs in relation to family dogs. Is that an accurate observation?
I think that's a spot on evaluation. Think about, so anyone that's listening, just kind of think about, the dogs that immediately in your life, the dogs that are hunting or sporting dogs, they have to be hunting, but sporting dogs, and the dogs that are at home family members, right? Think about the quality of life that each one of those dogs has. And, part of it for us is that, we know that we have to take an active role into, working with our dogs so that they can go be successful, be safe, be under control, do all these things, right? We have to teach. You don't have to normally teach a dog that is an at-home dog much of anything, right? You should do obedience, but when you really don't have a goal that you're working towards, it's easy to be like, oh, we'll do that tomorrow. Oh, we'll do that another day. And you just keep pushing it off.
Yeah.
With a sporting dog, it's like, hey, guess what? Come October 15th, pheasant season's here,
Game
and we
on.
need to be ready by then.
Yeah.
And so it kind of gives you that carrot that you're reaching for, right?
Yep.
And you just look at like the gun dogs I know, they are more under control. They're more understanding. They have a purpose in life. I mean, there's so many things that dog has versus the dog that just lays at home every day. I mean, those dogs are oftentimes anxious because they don't have a purpose that they know of in life. They're looking for something to exert this energy out into, and they don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of it, they have owners that naturally, and this isn't a diss on them, but it's just the truth. They have other things that they prioritize in their life, and the dog is just living in their world. And so I think it's a spot on evaluation. That's why it boggles my mind when people want to kind of knock on hunting dogs of like this is a negative thing in any way. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. So how long does the foundation take for you? I mean, I know it's something you go back to for the life of the dog, but like when you're working on foundation with the retriever, how long do you expect that to take?
Yeah. So the answer I like to give here is as long as it takes. And the reason that I say that is because every dog is different.
Sure.
Every person is different. And so, I mean, if you have someone that, works 5-6 days a week and has, dance at night with the daughter and little league at night with the son, and like you're strapped on time, I get it. Like, I know you're still going to work with the dog, but you may take longer than the person that, has the life and flexibility to work with their dog every day, right? Consistency is a huge part of this, consistency and repetition. And so it really depends. I mean, for us at the kennel, when dogs come in for us and what we'd call our foundation training, it's about 3 months, 3 months, but that's every day. And that's with the tools and the knowledge and everything that we have. For someone that is doing this on their own, it might be 2 months, it might be 2 years. You really don't know. But part of this too is when you start, like we talked about, like you got to let the puppy be a puppy. But at some point, like I really like to target that like 7 to 8 month mark of like you really got to be digging into it now. You really have to be, because you're getting into that teenage year that either he's going to start pushing you around or we're going to be under control. And so if you haven't done it by that point, you really have to start getting on it and start getting ahead of it. But yeah, it really depends. And for me, I know this is somewhat controversial, but I'm very open about this. I never hunt my dogs their first year. That first season, I never hunt them. And the reason is, now keep in mind, I'm much more waterfowl specific myself. But I think there's too many things, like when you're not done with training and the dog is still learning, when you start putting your dog into these uncontrolled situations, there's too much that can happen. So like for me in a waterfowl situation, if I don't have my dog completely steady, but I bring him out hunting, well, of course he's going to break. And if he breaks there, he's going to want to continue to break, which now I've caused an issue. If I just take that extra year, iron them out, give them more repetition, now we are really solid. Now I can put them into that uncontrolled situation knowing they're over prepared. So yeah, and that's just me. And I understand not everybody has, I think I have 12 dogs, now. So not everybody has, that. So it's easier for me to say, hey, you're going to set out and make sure that you're really solid before you go into the game. But I think it's something to think about, just know the repercussions that it could have putting your dog in the field when they're not done. And then, when you come back next training season, just know that.
Right. I think a lot of hunters, Josh, are in the category of like, they want to have a great dog. It's a family dog, and they might get out, 8-10 times a year, might do one nice long hunting trip out west, and that's kind of their season. And so their expectations aren't, like field trial, hunting champ or anything like that. And so they don't necessarily, they're willing to risk some of those things like hunting the dog the first year, without realizing the full impact of it. And I'll share an example with you. My dog, Daisy, she has all the potential in the world and is on, fast track to being just a rock star out there. And I got some wisdom from some hunters that had dogs that, 40 years of training pointing breeds. And they said, don't hunt that dog with the flusher. Don't take that dog out in the field with other dogs the first year. You're going to ruin her. You're going to ruin her. And in my mind, I'm like, all right, I want to hunt with my dog. I produce TV shows. I'm on the road, quite a bit in the fall. I hunt with strangers almost every day and their dogs. I'm not going to leave my dog at home because I want to take her. Okay. So that's me just saying, I'm making this decision. I can see now, after going through it, the results of my actions with my dog, because this dog that has so much potential is locking up on point and doing exactly what she's supposed to do. And here comes a flushing dog right up alongside her, bumps her off point and flushes the birds. This happens multiple times. And now my dog thinks she's a flusher, and she starts breaking point because she's thinking this is what I'm supposed to do. And now I look back on this situation and say, if I had a more mature dog ready for this to happen, it may not have involved, not like right now, the end of last season when I wasn't filming or in the field, like I was working with my dog a lot to try to get rid of those bad habits that she created. And again, that was just an immature dog going into experiences that I put her in that cost that. So that's an example on my side, but that's the reality of how we can influence our dogs out in the field, good and bad, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, spot on. Well, but Travis, the big thing that you did is you identified and owned it, right? Like, and that you have work ahead of you, this year to overcome some of that and get back on the right track, right?
Yeah.
I think as long as you know that, you're going to be good with it because you were able to watch those situations, through the right lens. Sometimes I feel like when we get our dogs in the field and, we're having a good time with our buddies and, we're in the moment, sometimes it's hard to really not only see, but then grasp the significance of some of those situations. And then the questions are like, why is my dog doing this? Or why do we have this bad habit all of a sudden? And sometimes when you ask yourselves those questions, when you don't have answers, that's where it can be frustrating, And so, I totally get it. I talk to so many people about not hunting, your dog your first year, and people are very honest with me. They're like, Josh, this is not going to happen. I'm going to hunt my dog your first year. And I'm like, totally get it. Totally get it. All that I'm going to ask is that you just keep in mind, these types of things, and if you start seeing big train wrecks, you got to be able to pull the plug. And if you start seeing, your buddy's dog, ripping birds out of your dog's mouth or blowing past your dog on point, or like, you just have to have the wherewithal to say, hey, this isn't right. I got to back out of here and put my dog in a better situation. But it is tough. I mean, it's hunting season, right? Like, this is what you look forward to this all year, and you want to be out there, and you want to be out there with your dog. But these young dogs are just so impressionable, and so it's good things to at least talk about, and at least kind of think about as you go out in the field.
Yeah, and it's led to more open dialogue for other hunters. I've kind of explained to them, here's what my dog's doing, and here's why I may pull her back or keep her out of this hunt or whatever it might be. And we just kind of talk through the scenarios a little bit more. And, as she progresses and matures, I anticipate being able to put her into those situations that she can understand, that she needs to stay put and hold her point, but she's still learning just like I am. And that's why it's fun to have these conversations with people like you and with, a lot of my friends and just to kind of like, we've all been there, this is normal stuff that we're working through together, and they can look at their dog and say, well, here's where I'm struggling. What do you think about this? And so, having a mentor has always been something that I tell people is very important. Find somebody that you trust, that you can bounce off ideas and say, what can I expect at this point and along the way? And so that you're not crazy for thinking, my dog is never going to be a good hunter and I'm never going to get there, because you will. You just need to see it through. The onX Hunt app is one of the most valuable hunting tools that I take into the field every day. I talk about the onX Hunt app every week. That's simply because I use it on every hunt. Seriously, every hunt. Their app tells me everything that I need to know about the land that I want to hunt and the lands that we can all legally hunt on. If you've used it yourself, then you know that the onX app shows your location on planet Earth and clearly lays out the land boundaries. It also tells you information about the type of property you're on, like state-owned land, federal lands, and walk-in access properties. It's ideal for scouting before the hunt and during a hunt to help put together patterns. The app also has helpful features that show you the kind of crops that are in the fields, which obviously is a big deal for us upland bird hunters. These are just a few of the many tools onX Maps give you, and these maps can even be used in areas without cell coverage. From the palm of your hand, onX Maps always help you to know where you stand. Nutrisource Pet Foods just launched a new product that can give our active hunting dogs a big boost when they need it most. It's called Kombucha. Nutrisource Kombucha, inspired of course by kombucha, is a savory, meaty bone broth topper that's packed with activated postbiotics from a fermentation product that thrives in the gut to promote a healthy gut ecosystem for digestion support. That's a mouthful. But what it means for us bird dog owners is that we now have a healthy topper to pour over our dog's food if they're ever stressed or won't eat while on a long hunting trip. Kombucha is offered in 3 flavors: turkey, beef, and chicken, and comes in a 12-ounce pouch. Nutrisource high-performance dog foods provide exceptional healthy nutrition for active dogs of every breed, just like my dog Daisy. Now they have a topper that gives our 4-legged hunters another edge when they need it the most. Check out their full lineup of dog foods at NutrisourcePetFoods.com. So at what point do you consider a dog, leaving the foundation stage and heading into the intermediate stage?
Mm-hmm. Well, really I was kind of look at it in steps, right? So for me, you got to have a dog that is really, really solid with their obedience, right? Like on lead, off lead, they're really solid. You feel really good, not only in your front yard or your backyard, which is where most of us train, right? But in new situations, you can take them on a walk, you can take them in the field, and you know that they're going to be under control. That's a big piece of it. Then also we have to have our bird and gun introduction done, right? Because we don't want to get all the way through the end of all this training and not know if we have a dog that is great with birds and guns. We want that done early on. And so, bird and gun is also a big piece of that too, is really making sure that we've introduced our dog to birds properly, which I feel like oftentimes is overlooked.
Can you explain how you introduce a dog to birds?
Yeah, for sure. So it's all about, it's kind of a step-by-step, confidence builder, right? And so what we want to do is we want to make this really fun for the dogs. So we're going to start with something, depending on the dog, right? But let's just go through the whole gamut. We'll start with something as simple as a wing, kind of toss it a little bit, let them go over to it, smell it, pick it up. And, and of course, this is not for a pointing breed, this is for a flushing or retrieving breed. We want something that is very manageable and easy for them to pick up, right? That's the first step. Then we'll move to a dead bird doing the same thing. And then we'll move to a clipwing bird. Or again, for a flushing dog, we want that dog to see that and see that bird trying to get away. We want that prey drive to peak. We want them to want to go after and go get that bird. That's really, really important. Now, for a pointing dog, it's the exact opposite. Like, we do not want them catching that bird, because if they catch that bird, now they're going to want to catch it again. And so, two very different avenues there. But the big thing in this is confidence. We want to peak, bring out that genetic, instinct. We want them to, that drive to really pop out of them. We want them to love this. I mean, really, you want this to be where you watch the light bulb go off, or on rather, and you go, oh my gosh, like, my dog understands why they were put on this earth. That is an extremely impactful moment. When you watch that happen, it's like, oh my gosh.
It's cool to see the light switch turn on for a puppy. It is so cool to watch.
Think about that. I mean, if every person had that moment in their life, this is what I was put on this earth to do. I mean, that's incredible, right? Yeah. So to be able to watch it in a dog is really fun. And so, again, it's just building that confidence, building that desire, building that drive. But we don't want it to be the first time that a dog sees a bird is, that pheasant that got winged and they run up to that rooster and they get spurred or flapped in the face. I mean, that's not a good positive first experience. We like pigeons because pigeons are of a size that is very manageable. They have a wing beat that is not overly intimidating. You'd think a quail being smaller is oftentimes better because they're smaller, but they have a very violent wing beat that can kind of back dogs off once in a while. So it's all about confidence building. Build that confidence.
Gotcha. And then when do you, or how do you like to go about introducing the gunshot?
Yeah, so I do it a little differently. So a lot of times, like, when I was learning from guys, what we would do is we'd go through the bird piece of it, and then we would, bring in the gun, and we'd have a gunner out a long ways. We'd shoot, and we'd just gradually move in as, that dog was distracted. Move in until you're shooting right over the dog. And that worked great for the dogs that it worked great for. If anything went wrong and the dog all of a sudden like noticed the shot, and again, for us in a professional situation, in the back of our heads, we never know. Did this dog have a bad experience with fireworks? Did this dog have the lawnmower backfire in the yard? Like, we don't know. It's not gun shyness. It's noise shyness. It could be anything that caused that dog to be fearful of a loud noise. So we always have to play it safe. And so what we do, which is a little unique, is we take the birds away during the burn gun intro. And the reason we do that is because if we have any kind of an issue with the noise, we don't want the dog staring at that bird when it happens.
To associate it with the bird at all.
That's exactly it. We don't want to take the thing that we should have this dog loving more than anything else. Yeah. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a second. And when I look at this, that noise I don't like happens. So now I want to shy away from birds. We don't want that. And so we take the gun away. We have a process that we do to make sure that that dog is desensitized to that gun properly. But that's kind of the big note on that is just making sure we separate that, because we do not want in any way that bird to be a negative association.
How of all the dogs that you've trained, I mean, what percentage are gun shy? Can you say, like, there's a 5% chance that your dog will be gun shy, or 10%, or, like, just what are the odds?
Mm-hmm. Well, it really, it's really the people and how they were, brought up, right? Because there's not a dog on this planet that was ever born gun shy, right? Like it's a human fault. It's a human error. And sometimes I shouldn't even say fault, because sometimes that comes across as aggressive. The number of dogs that we have seen that are gun shy, that is because, the neighbor lit off a firework that they weren't expecting at the cabin on 4th of July. It's like, I feel so much for those people, because that's a huge situation that we now have to overcome. That was not a fault of their own. They didn't know it was going to happen. They were doing everything right. They were playing with their dog in the front yard, but it's a super unfortunate situation that now we're tasked with getting over. And so really for us, the sad thing is like July 5th, 6th, 7th, that's when our phone rings off the hook with this, because like people, they get so, naturally stuff like this happens and people get nervous and they're like, oh my gosh, like, did I just ruin my dog? And it's a tough situation, but, avoiding it and really making sure that those noises are introduced properly. It's the best, way to do it. And then, just making everything a positive. Again, we talked about a while back, producing that bold, confident puppy. And that's really what we're doing here too.
What do you do in that circumstance? I mean, I know that's probably a topic in itself, but what do you do when a dog is gun shy?
Yeah, it's the first thing is we try to evaluate and get inside the dog's head, right? So for like, what are you thinking? Like, what are you scared of, right? Is it the noise itself? Was it like, we know when somebody screwed up, like the number of dogs that become gun shy because someone lit off a 12 gauge over them to see if they were gun shy is pretty incredible. I mean, it's comical to us and it's probably comical to most of the people listening, but it's not a normally thought thing for the average guy that is going to hunt once or twice a year. Like, they just don't think of it. Yeah. And so the hard part is, okay, so what is it that you're scared of? For some dogs, it's the sight of the gun because of the uncertainty, of what's to come. Sometimes it is just the noise. Sometimes, we can get dogs over it very quickly because of how much they love birds and love that side of it. And we can use that to our advantage and build them up and then very, very, very slowly integrate that noise back into it. But it's the big thing is getting inside the dog's head. You'd be shocked at the number of dogs that come in for gun shyness that it's actually a bird shyness that was associated with the gun. And so what I mean by that is like a lot of people, they think about gun desensitization. They think about introducing the dog to the gun. And so they'll bring the dog to the gun club and work their way in, throwing a tennis ball, and they'll, have, the family, shoot trap or shoot skeet or something like that and have, work the dog into it. And the dog's great with the guns, but the dog's never seen a rooster before. And at 7 months old, the dog's out there exploring, going, what's going on? What's going on? Oh, I smell something that's really interesting. Smell. All of a sudden, and might as well be a pterodactyl. Right. Comes out of the brush, and the dog is going, what the heck, and backs out of there. And then all of a sudden, 3-4 guys, boom, 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 go off, and the dog is like, I'm out.
I'm not and it's doing like, this.
It wasn't the guns because you'd been through the gun piece of it.
It was the pterodactyl.
Yeah, that's right. The birds freaked him out, and then the guns lit off on top of it. And then it's like, and so the reason I say that is that's why we evaluate. That's why we go through this evaluation of like, what is it that you are actually nervous of? What is actually making you shy? Now, on a 4th of July situation, that's a little easier situation than someone that's like, man, like, we took him out on a pheasant hunt, to the game farm. The first bird went up, we shot, and all of a sudden I looked around and we couldn't find him, and he was cowering back underneath the truck. Like that situation, there's a lot going on there. So what is it and what's actually going on? That's always our first step.
Yeah, I've heard the story multiple times, exactly what you just said. They were 10 feet behind me, didn't leave back of my legs, and that dog never hunted again. I've heard that story multiple times. But you can get a dog through that, you're saying?
We can, but the two things that I never guarantee one, that we will get through it.
Yep.
And I never guarantee a timeline in which we'll get through, because you just don't, like, when you're dealing with a fear, you just never know. Like I like to use the example of my wife. And I use my wife because I'm too
careful here.
Too masculine to admit that I'd be the same. Yeah. But she hates snakes.
Who doesn't?
Snakes.
Who doesn't?
Oh my gosh!
I'm with you.
We live up in Minnesota, Wisconsin, right?
Yes.
But hates them, and like tiny little gardener snake, looks like a worm. Hates them. And now for her, like, use her in the situation of, okay, so now you're going to come in and we're going to, get you over your snake shyness, right? Like, that's what you're dealing with, right? You're dealing with a dog that has convinced himself, this is awful. This is terrible. I hate it. It scares me. I don't want anything to do with it. And now you not only need to convince them it's okay, but then in turn make them love it. Like, to make my wife love snakes? Are you kidding me?
So,
but that's what you're doing.
This is a real story. So I was probably 8 or 10 years old, and I used to, after a rain, I'd go out and pick night crawlers out of the grass for bait to go fishing with a little flashlight. And there were so many night crawlers out that I'm just flying. I'm just grabbing them like crazy, throwing them in my bucket. Like I'm all jacked. I got to go catch so many fish next morning. And I go from one night crawler to the next, and the next one I grab wraps around my hand. It was a snake. And that's 30 years ago, Josh. And I still remember it. Like it still comes back to me once in a while. That one time when I grabbed that snake and it wrapped around, it was a cinnamon belly snake. So it looked just like the same color. Brandon, you're shaking your head.
No,
dude, it was like
not a fun introduction.
No. So like this story, it totally makes sense. So I understand what a bird dog is going through now. I relate because I will not ever be able to get that terrible, like that snake wrapping around my hand out of my memory. It's stuck there. Yuck.
Brandon, I'll give you $10 if you can find a pipe cleaner and like go like really soft behind like Travis's neck. Or
a future office prank is coming
right now.
Yeah, future office prank is coming. He revealed his weakness. He shouldn't have played that hand. So
Oh my gosh. Not to get sidetracked, but that's real life, man. I relate to all those dogs now. I get it. Oh
yeah. Well, and here's what's funny is that we I've kind of talked about before how, I think we humanize dogs when it's convenient for us to humanize dogs, right? So like we humanize dogs when, we want them to, come in the house and be a part of the family and lay in bed with us and sit in the front seat. And like, we like to humanize them, right? I mean, that's naturally most of us do. But then like all of a sudden we throw that out the window when it's not convenient for us, right? So like, shyness like this, like when you put it in an analogy like that, it's very easy for us to understand because we humanize the situation. We go, oh my gosh, like I can see why this is an issue, but if you don't look at it like that and you look at this dog that's scared of the gun, you're like, why are you being a wuss? Like, why is this an issue? Like you should love to hunt. Like you're a hunting dog. You should, it's not that easy, and like it hit me the other day too, where, where again, we take off the table humanizing dogs when it's not convenient for us. It's like we, knock on wood, we've been extremely clean at the kennel. Like we've not had many issues at all with just viruses and things that come through, like kennel cough. Kennel cough is like the dog flu. Every dog that comes in is vaccinated for it. Every dog that comes in is checked out and should be all good, but they could still carry something in. Like we've been very fortunate. I have friends of mine that come through their kennel 2-3 times a year. And I can count this. I can count on one hand the number of times we've had it in our kennel, in 12 years. But we had one time a couple of years ago that it came through. A dog that came from Colorado was coming back. And this is a traveling tip for anyone that travels with their dogs. Don't stop at rest areas. Don't stop at truck stops to let your dogs out, because that's where everyone stops. And where does everybody let their dogs out? And all those dogs are not vaccinated. All those dogs are not cared for like your dog is. And it's the best way for your dog to pick something up. So this dog came from Colorado, stopped at rest stops the whole way, comes in the kennel, 5 days later, coughing. Well, the entire kennel is infected now, right? And so like naturally, so we have vets come out and we're giving antibiotics. It's a mess. We let everybody know. Everybody's great with it because they understand we're doing everything we can to do this. Well, there's one person that was like, are you guys not taking good enough care of the dogs? And are you guys not keeping the facility clean enough, all this stuff? I'm like, what? You've seen our kennel is not an average facility, like immaculately clean, over the top care, like full staff of people that do nothing to care for the dogs. Like it's over the top. And, and it hit me that next day I went to go pick up my kids from daycare. And I'm like, you walk into the daycare and there's all these signs on the door, right? And it's like, here's what's going around this room. Here's what's going on in this room. Here's what's, all the whole wide, whole center wide is like, this. And it's like, well, yeah, I know when I bring my kids into an environment with a whole bunch of other kids, there's a really good chance that they pick something up and they're going to get sick. And then I'm probably going to get sick, right? It's just the way it is. Yeah. And I'm like, why is that different now with the dogs? Like, you know what I mean? Like, sure. Again, going back to the humanizing part of it, it's like we humanize them when we want to humanize them. But then like you get a dog like this that is is in like the mental fear, like you don't just wave a magic wand and that goes away. You don't just say, hey, you should love this. And the dog goes, oh, okay, I should love it now.
Yeah.
It's just different.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to a trained retrieve that you call it, not force fetch, but trained retrieve, which is, I mean, is it the same thing? I know your process is different, so it's not, like the force isn't being put on the dog, but what's your goal there?
So my goal is the same as what a force fetch would be, which is, we teach the dog what to do with their mouth. We have that good solid finish retrieve. We create a stronger bond, with the dog through working, with their mouth, which is the most intimate thing that you can do with a dog because their whole life revolves around their mouth. But we do it in a way that we're not hammering on the dogs through it. Okay. So what I mean by that is, like, whenever I learned from guys of how to do the force fetching, it was always the same way. It was, you applied a bunch of pressure on the dog. When you applied that pressure, you need the pressure to be enough to where the dog would open their mouth and scream, because it's saying like, ow. Oh. And when they do that, you shove something in their mouth, you take the pressure off, and they learn that they get something in their mouth because they need that pressure to come off, right? To me, especially for a retriever that, or any dog that wants to go retrieve, are we moving backwards a little bit by making this where this is what I love to do more than anything else? And now we're having a major repercussion, a major, negative association with this. And so, it took me years to go through this, and a lot of dogs, I trained a lot of dogs for free, just trying to find the best way to make this happen. And through the trained retrieve, when I call it the trained retrieve, is I think there's such a negative association with force fetch. I don't believe many people could use that high pressure method on their own dogs. I just think, these dogs are our best buddies. They're part of our family. And it can be a very forceful thing. Through the trained retrieve, we're going to teach how to use your mouth. We're going to teach you, this is how we want you to hold something. We're going to teach you, that basically you're playing T-ball, right? Before this, you're doing this because you love to do it, because something in your DNA tells you should be doing it. But we need to start putting rules around the game. We need to start saying, hey, instead of just running the bases, you need to stop at first because the guy second has the ball, right? Yep. That's what this is. You don't get to retrieve halfway back anymore and just drop it. You need to finish that retrieve, come to my side, and have that good hold until I tell you to drop, right? If I tell you to fetch, we're actually teaching you what fetch is, not a bird fell, your dog runs over to it, and your dog doesn't know, but you yell, fetch him up, fetch him up, fetch him up. Well, if you haven't actually taught your dog how to use their mouth and what fetch is, you might as well be yelling refrigerator, because the dog has no idea what it is you're talking about. Yeah. And so,
can you describe what that process looks like?
Not without taking another hour of doing it, but
yeah, I suppose
the idea though is teaching, really taking your time. Will this process take longer than, and because I force fetch too. I did that a number of years because that's the way I was taught. I learned how to do it that way. And so it took me a long time to get this process, but I love this process because we don't get the dogs that are ducking their heads, or, when we tell them to fetch, you don't see the ears go back and the head go down. They eagerly do it. They still know what they're supposed to be doing, but they eagerly do it. And it is a process. It's a long process, so I won't dig too much into it, but it's something that I believe the process that I've laid out in Retriever Roadmap, I think anybody can do with their own dog. Will it take more time than an old school force fetch? Yes. Absolutely will. But I think the end result is one that I think people are really happy with. What actually kind of led me to exploring some of this is I had a great mentor of mine. He's retired now, but great guy, great retriever trainer, very successful. He told me that the force fetch was the only part of the training process that he wouldn't allow a owner to watch. And it was because it looked brutal, right? Just because there was so much pressure you're putting on the dog. And that was my first why. And I remember talking to him about it one night, and I'm like, man, it just kind of bothers me. It's I get why you're saying that. I get that someone would have an issue with this, they wouldn't like what they're seeing. And I get it. I really do. And, but can't there be a better way? And I remember he was like, Josh, he's like, if there's a better way, you're the one to find it, because I'm too set in my ways now. I've been doing this for too long. Like, I'm not going to change. But someone like yourself, like, you might be able to do it. He was the first person I called when I had this process done. And he's probably been one of my biggest fans, through this whole thing too, because he's just been so supportive. And it's really kind of been a cool thing.
Well, maybe we have another show sometime and we just break down force fetch.
Could. Yeah, we could definitely do that.
In this method, if you're open to it. I know this is something you've worked really hard on, but I think, there's a lot of people that now, myself included, that are like, I got to know what it is. Like, I want to see it. I mean, obviously they can go to your site and see it. So there you go. There's your call to action.
Roadmap.
Yeah. Now you got me sucked in. I'm in. I want to watch it. And my dog retrieves. She does great, but I want to see this. Cause like my mind, like I'm trying to understand dogs in ways that I've never tried to understand them before. So I'm just fascinated by it. That's why I can have conversations like this that can just go and go and go. Like when I'm hunting with trainers and I'm just fascinated all the time. And gosh, we've been talking for like an hour and a half already, Josh. Let's try to put a bow on this.
Okay.
What is well, I've got like 1,000 more questions. Let's do this. What is a common mistake, the most common mistake you see people that train their own dogs make?
Without a question, going too fast. They're too slow is always better than too fast. And again, I keep referring back to Rick and Ronnie and Delmer, because you guys have talked about them, and I've learned so much from them. They're great people and great teachers. Yeah. But one of the things I heard Rick say at one of the first seminars I ever went of his was that he's never seen a dog ruined by going too slow, but he's seen a lot of them ruined by going too fast. And I firmly believe that. I am in complete agreement, because, especially, and I really believe it has to do with social media today. Yeah. I think, people on social media now, it's like, we want to get to the fun stuff so we can show it off. We want to show our buddies, we want to show our family, like, this is what my dog can do. Like, nobody's showing off on leash obedience. Like nobody's doing that. You're not putting that on your Instagram story. You want to get to the fun stuff, but going too fast is the quickest way to move backwards. Like that old Navy SEAL, saying, which is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Like that's this. Going slow is the best way to do this, because think about, not only you're trying to teach your dog something, but quite frankly, you're trying to teach it in a language that they don't know. Like, it kind of might be a newsflash for people, but like, your dog doesn't speak English, and so you're trying to teach them a new language and teach them how to progress and work towards a goal. There's a lot going on. It doesn't happen overnight. I think Amazon has trained us to, click and we can have everything we want in 2 days. And this is not one of those things.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really, really good point, and we can close on that. And sorry, I can't. I'm not going to close yet, because like, I hear people that don't do their own training and they talk to their dog as if giving them a whole sentence or paragraph of a command is actually going to make sense for the dog. Like, use one word, like, whoa, here, stay, like, they understand that. Daisy's looking at me right now. She's like, which one do you want me to do, Dad? But like, oh gosh, just, I feel like this information that you have and the wisdom that you have is just priceless. So hopefully people have enjoyed listening to you. I know I have. Brandon, like, you've got, maybe you're going to get another dog again.
Maybe, yeah.
And I feel like you could use this information to build a foundation with your dog, that you will have a dog that, if you choose to hunt or not with that dog, will always be just like a sweetheart, a dog that you can take into public. You don't have to hunt with that dog, but they will have manners that will just, other people see it and they're like, holy cow. I mean, I remember working on the street with my dog, on the lead, and day after day, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes here, in a half acre space, and working with her. And now the neighbors are like, look at her, like, she doesn't need to be on a leash right now. I'm like, no, she knows her boundaries. She knows her rules. and she comes immediately when I call her. She comes right to me. She will heel. Like it's awesome.
It's so cool, and it's cool for me because I had when I had my previous dog, I got him like when I was in my early 20s, and I trained him. I spent a lot of time with him, but now I'm learning all these things, and later on in life, I'm like, there's a lot of things I could have done better. My dog was great, turned out just fine, didn't hunt, but was just it was a house dog. But there's so many of these things that you can just apply to just whatever type of dog that you have or whatever you want to use your dog for, whether it's taking a dog out for your morning run or having a hiking dog. It doesn't have to be like a hunting sort of a thing. So
right.
I think you could apply this sort of thing to so much. And I was just checking out the website too, Josh, the riverstonekennels.com. It's a great looking website. It's set up fantastically. It's really easy to navigate for people to get around on. It's just a really good place to go. So if anyone wants to check out more from Josh, please go to riverstonekennels.com because it's fantastic.
Yeah, you've got two
Thanks,
sites,
guys.
and between you and your wife, I know you guys are your training skills are elite. Your photography skills are elite. I mean, you're running what appears to be just a high end operation, and obviously, just listening to the training wisdom has been a blessing. So you've given us a couple hours of your time. I hope people will, if they choose to want to learn more, they can reach out to you, or they can go, the retrieverroadmap.com as well and learn more about, the videos that you're offering out there to see it. It's something to hear it. It's another thing to see it. I've seen it, and, it really can help you to become a trainer for your own dog that will help you guys have a bond in the field to reach that level if you so choose to want it. So, Josh, I appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys both, Travis, Brandon, both you guys, and thank you for everyone listening. And let's do this again, guys. It sounds like you have more questions, and I certainly want to talk with you guys more. So, maybe sometime again here in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a great opportunity to just ask our listeners for specific dog training questions. I come up with, I mean, I don't have any questions written down here. Like as we're talking, Josh, like I'm just thinking in my mind, I'm thinking through things, and like, I want to know more about what you know. So I'm asking these questions, but I could see us having, ask a trainer show. Brandon, I don't know what you think about that, but like just listeners sending us questions, I'll keep them. And then whenever it happens that we have you on, we can throw these questions out there. So find us at, on Instagram, just search The Flush TV. Same with Facebook, same with the World Wide Web. TheFlush.tv is the website. And then people send me a lot of stuff directly too. You can just search Travis Frank on Instagram and send me messages as well. I keep all this information. I love interacting with all of you. So keep the lines of communication open. I'll do the same. Brandon, any last thoughts today as we wrap up segment 2 of the dog training?
I've listened to 2.5 hours worth of dog stuff in the past 2 days. I think I'm pretty much an expert at this point.
Yeah, you can train a dog.
Sorry, Josh. It looks like I'm going to be starting up a competing business to yours.
What are you going to call it?
I don't know yet. I'm still in the process of developing this business idea.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still budding.
River Run Kennels.
Yeah, there you go. River Pebble Kennels.
Stone River.
There you go. I think Josh is gonna outcompete you.
I know he will.
Yes. All right, Josh. Good luck chasing those turkeys out there.
Thank you guys so much. You guys have a great rest of the week, and great talking with you guys. Thank you again.
You bet. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Flush Podcast. I'm Travis Frank, reminding you to take the time to introduce someone new, anybody, especially a kid, to the field.